There he is.
How's that? Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Georgia. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I am very excited for this. You won't have heard this, but before I left for the little break, we had like a 45-minute break. I was like, I wanted to get into radio and podcasts when I was younger. Radio and podcasts weren't really a thing at the time. So radio was my thing. My friend and I used to make little pretend radio stations. when we
Really?
yeah. We'd like pretend that we were on like Radio 4 and we
Love
like,
that.
yeah. And I am like the world's most obsessed podcast fanatic. So like this is a big session for me.
So I'm exactly the same as you. I'm obsessed with podcasts, absolutely obsessed with them. So we're on the same level there.
Love that. Okay, so Georgia, it's time to start. So tell us, who are you? What do you do? Tell us a bit more about what your world in audio is like.
Of course. So as you said, my name is Georgio Savvides. I'm a music teacher, therapist, and mentor from North London. Also a piano tutor too. I'm also the founder and composer / pianist of the Hip Hop Orchestra, as well as a podcaster too, obviously. So I also host and edit two different my own podcasts. One's called Hip Hop Orchestra Presents, which is all about talking to the most amazing people within the entertainment industry, music, film, arts, and so forth, which is absolutely amazing. And my other one, which I started about 1.5 years ago, called Keep It 30. That's dedicated to schools, so talking to students, teachers, parents, all about mental health, future ambitions, creativity, and so much more. So that's a very kind of short intro to what I do, but there we go.
Perfect. No, that was absolutely wonderful. And so many of the staff and students watching will be like, oh my God, he knows our world. He's in education. That's amazing. So there we go. What a multifaceted portfolio career you have. Let's talk about what I guess what was your career path from around the age of 16. What were you like at school? You know, what were your first steps into higher education or straight into the working world? And then how did you get to where you are now?
Of course. So I'll go back a bit before 16 and talk about my school life. I actually struggled really badly at school. Me being dyspraxic, I found it really difficult at school. And as much as I love education, reading and learning and so forth, I really struggled at school. But music was my getaway from everything because I was self-taught on the piano from about 5-6 years onwards. And then from 11 years onwards, had proper lessons, did all my grades. So that's how I got into the world of music, like playing piano, making my own music as well and so forth through educational software. And then it wasn't until I was about 15-ish, through my second year of college, where I kind of knew that I wanted to get into music somehow because I was just obsessed with music and still am to this day. But I didn't kind of know which route I'd go down until my second year of college, actually, where within that second year of college, we actually started doing composing and production lessons. And it was like a light bulb moment, thinking, you know what, that's what I want to do in my life as a composer and producer. So years after that, I started producing my music soon after. And after we finished college, after my third year of doing a music performance course, which I passed, by the way, with high levels, I actually got a job at the Roundhouse in Camden as an engineer and runner as well. And because, like I said, I struggled at school, the way they were teaching, I couldn't quite grasp it. I realized that the way I learn best is by actually being thrown in the deep end, just by doing things. So when I got thrown into the deep end of working at the Roundhouse, it was so fast paced, but yeah, I learned so much that way. So I was working with local bands. We're doing like behind the scenes moments with like major festivals like the iTunes Festival, working with people like Flo Rida and Kanye West and so forth. And through the Roundhouse also, we had a tour at this studio called the Metropolis in Chiswick. And that's one of the world's biggest studios, actually. And at the time, as luck would have it, they were actually looking for runners at the time. So immediately I put my hand thinking, could I do that? Could I do that? Got the job there. And through there, I worked with other major artists like Rihanna and major orchestras as well. And seeing how they would work behind the scenes in the studios and so forth, I just learned a massive amount. And this was about a few years after that, I stepped my own hip hop orchestra up as a way of trying to change perceptions of both classical and hip hop. Because me being a classically trained musician on piano, I've always loved hip hop too. And I always wondered how it would sound if I mixed both genres at the same time. Because with hip hop, a lot of it, one of the main kind of elements of hip hop is sampling, and they'll always sample different genres and so forth, classical being one of them. And I always thought, how would it sound if I mixed live classical instruments with a hip hop beat? And then from there, this was over 10 years ago now that I started that. And from there, I've achieved some of the most amazing things, such as winning awards, giving a TED talk, performing at some major festivals, working with major UK artists as well. It's giving a TED talk, I think I just said there as well. So it's been absolutely amazing. And from there, I just learned a huge amount.
Oh my God. I mean, what a journey. That is absolutely amazing. And it all came from just like experimenting, like listening to yourself, listening to what you would have wanted to hear yourself as well. Learner by doing. I completely relate to that. That's why I didn't go to uni, because I'm like, I'm not really designed to, to learn that way. So yeah, no, I completely understand that, getting hands-on. And then also like the initiative, like,
Mhm.
having access to that initiative, like the Roundhouses initiative, like really opened so many doors for you and got you so much experience.
It
Um,
really did.
for those young people listening, there are lots of initiatives like that out there, and actually that's exactly what we collect on the Eric app and give people access to. We help you find that stuff. So, but anyway, that's not what this is about, but don't worry, there is lots of stuff like that out there for you as well. So Georgia, okay, and let's talk about your transition, because I mean, you've been experimenting with audio,
Mhm.
music, whatever it is, like your whole life. So talk a bit more about did you ever, I guess, when podcasts started to become a thing, is that something
Mhm.
that you wanted to pick up immediately? Were you like, oh my God, I've got all the skills and equipment to be able to do this.
Yeah.
That's what I need to do.
It's actually funny you said it, because such an easy transition, because like we said, I'm just like you, I'm obsessed with podcasting. And whilst I used to listen to my podcasts, people would always ask me the same sort of question, like, how did you get started in music? How did you start the orchestra? What was it doing? Like, what was it like doing this and that? So you think, you know what? As much as I love answering people's questions, I'm going to start my own podcast to allow people to listen to my journey, and then from there, listen to other people's journey within entertainment and so forth. So, like I said, I had the equipment. I bought a few exhibits just in case. But then from there, I researched into how to set my own podcast up. So I got the names that I needed. I had loads of guests already lined up too. Spoke to my orchestra members as well. And then from there, it's been an amazing journey. So with my Hip Hop Orchestra Presents podcast, which is all about music and guests within music, I've done over 100 episodes with that, with several thousands of downloads now and views, which is amazing. And through actually that podcast as well, I've met some of the most incredible people within music, people that I looked up to for years, actually, that I can now call friends of mine as well. People that I looked up to, and just learned so much as well, because for me, this is still one of the best ways of learning is through podcasting, just listening to people's journeys and just sitting back and being a part of their journey too. So having that transition going from live performance into a podcast session was like a seamless transition. I just loved it ever since.
Yeah, no, it seems so natural, right? It makes
Mhm.
a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It
And actually,
does.
we've already had a question for you, Giorgio, which is
Mhm.
equipment and software. This
Yeah.
is one of the most, I guess, most asked questions that you will get. If someone is looking to start their own podcast because
Mhm.
it feels like a natural fit, what do they go and get? Like, what would you recommend?
So straight away, I'm lucky enough to have a MacBook. That's what I use. So if you have the funds for a MacBook, that's what I would get. From there, I'll also get some microphones as well, of like I've got right here a microphone stand, the cables, and what we call an audio M box as well, which allows you to connect your microphone into your laptop. And
Oh,
then from there, and also with MacBooks, it's a good thing as well. It has inbuilt software in there too, so you're allowed to record your audio into the laptop straight away, which is fantastic. Or if you can't get an inbox, call it an audio interface. So that allows you to connect your mic into the laptop. But if not, there are ways around a MacBook where you can actually create your own kind of interface within the system. It's quite complicated, so I won't explain it now, but there are YouTube links on there which you can actually find and do that way, which is fantastic.
that's really cool. Great. Thank you so much. That's a really good comprehensive overview of the things
Yeah.
that you've
Mhm.
said. Okay, and so yes, young people watching will be like, this sounds great. Podcasting, audio, radio, it's quite obvious how those things are all interlinked.
Mhm.
They're all, the same kind of software, the same kind of, equipment, all of that kind of stuff. But how can young people get into that industry? So let's say they are starting with just like playing around with audio like you were
Mhm.
doing. Like, what would you recommend that they use? What would you recommend that they start doing? Like, is there do they need to start shouting about the
Mhm.
fact that they're doing it? Like, what's your advice?
Of course. So what I would do, because I've got two different podcasts, my second one, I use my second podcast as an example. So my second one called Keep It 30 is an educational one to help young people, teachers and parents with their mental health and future ambitions. So what I would suggest that once you have a theme of what you want to talk about, that's the most important thing first, because if you don't have a theme to talk about, something that maybe you're not so passionate about, then it's quite hard to do a podcast. So what I would do first is choose a theme slash subject that you're really passionate about, whether it's football, education, music, whatever it might be. And from there, I would suggest finding a name that is suitable for your podcast. So say you're doing a cooking podcast, you could do like, say, for instance, the cooking podcast or the Cook It podcast or frying up podcast, whatever it might be. So that's the most important thing. But also when you search for a name as well, make sure that it's quite an obvious thing, but sometimes people overlook this, is make sure no one else has the same name as your one. Because I've found out that my friends have actually set up, say, a football podcast with a name, but someone else actually already taken it. So like 50 episodes in, I didn't actually realize. So it's like, oh, you don't know. Why'd you do that for? So it's quite a simple thing, but so important. So first two things straight away, think of a name and a subject you're passionate about, put them together. And then from there, talk about kind of resources that's so useful. There's two that stick out in mind to me. So there's a website called Fiverr, or it's also an app too. Fiverr spelled with a double R. And that is a website for freelancers that help you design whatever you need. So say you need a logo for your podcast, or help setting up like a dedicated website for your podcast. There's people on there that can pay to actually do this for you. And that's such an amazing thing too. But if the funds aren't quite available for that, and especially for the design concepts or things, I would use a fantastic website called Canva, which is a big thing too. So it's Canvas, but without an S at the end. So Canva. And that website, you could pay for things that you needed to as well. But if you want, there's a lot of free resources or free resources on there too, where you can design your own logos, your things from there. Brilliant. But I think they're my two personal favorites. But if you're also lucky enough to have access to Wi-Fi as well at home, or whether it might be on a smartphone, Google and social media is your best friend. Because although I know sometimes obviously social media does get a lot of flack for a lot of different reasons, for me, if you use it in the correct way for social networking and meeting the right sort of people, whether it's LinkedIn or through Instagram, Twitter, whatever it might be, you can actually find the correct people you want to network and find. Because you might not think it, but there's so many people out there that are willing to help you. They might be well known in the industry and might be so busy, but if you're willing to put in the time to network and get in touch with people that are out there who are more experienced than you in life, whether it's in radio or podcasting, music, and say, look, when I'm starting out, or I love your work. This is a good tip as well, actually, for finding guests too, is once you have everything set up as well, is people, although they something might not want to admit it, people love talking about themselves. So if you give them that opportunity to talk about themselves, whether it's their journey or whatever it might be, through podcasting, that is brilliant. And then from there, if you're lucky enough to get someone with a good, big social media following too, that will then help you massively as well in the future, because they can share a clip from your episode or the episode itself. And then from there, other people will come into your podcast too. So once you have everything set up, from the subject to the name to everything between the logos and so forth, just reach out to people. And whether it's in person too, which you can find on social media or just by Google, or just reach out directly to the person and talking to them, and you'll learn so much in the process too. So that'd be my advice to you.
Thank you so much, Georgio. And finally, just one quick question before we run out of time. Audio, careers in just like audio in general. Can you just describe to us, because you are a great example of someone who has, taken the theme of audio and then, you've really run with it. Like, you do lots of different things in the audio space, I guess kind of reassurance that you would give for young people out there who are like, I know, young Sam who was doing little radio shows, when she was a kid or whatever. What's the advice that you would give to them about the breadth of different things that you can do?
For sure. So my main thing would be to just be persistent, because a lot of people, I realize, that do start podcasts, they might do a few episodes and just stop after that. But with whatever you do, you have to be persistent with it. There will be times it will be really difficult, and you might not get the kind of feeling of actually doing the work. But this is what sets the difference between someone who's maybe an amateur who's to the probably more experienced, is overcoming those obstacles of just pushing through when you're not always feeling up for doing it. So be persistent. and keep creating content in the process too. It's hard work. I won't lie. It's a long process, but keep putting that work out there, and people will know about you after a while. And once you keep doing that, people will reach out to you for work as well. So that's what I realized is, at the first, obviously, you're nobody to start with. But when you keep putting that work at reaching new people and so forth, people then reach out to you, get a name for yourself, and then you won't look back. So just be persistent, and always ask for help too. Never be afraid to ask for help, because especially with young people, everyone finds this difficult no matter what your age. But I feel with young people especially, is they're afraid to ask for help, whether it's not knowing what something is or how to do something. It's just ask for help, because like we said earlier, there are people there to help you. So whether you don't know how to get a logo done, or how to talk to people, or how to plan for a podcast, for instance, it's just ask for help. And people will advise you, they'll allow you to think outside the box, something, oh, I didn't think of that. So ask for help, and so be persistent, ask for help.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Great words to end on.
Thank
Georgio,
you.
it's been so lovely having you here. Thank you so much. We are bang on time as well. I love it. Yes, wonderful words of wisdom there. And I know that there's a lot of young people out there who will totally be taking away from this. You can start podcasting now. Like, you don't have to wait. Amazing. Thank you so much. Time to move on to the next speaker, the lovely Jamie, who I have just asked to come into the panelist room. Thank you so much, Giorgio.
Thank you so
have a
much.
lovely rest of the day, and we'll
Thank
chat to
you
you very
too.
soon.
No worries. Take care. Bye bye.